Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Neptune in conjunction with your ascendant. Remember that the ascendant is the cusp of the first house of the self, and it is the backbone of the natal chart. It really can give some kind of indication about how a person looks and how they appear to others. So this is one of those situations where you may have a very dynamic or extroverted, whatever you want to call it, outgoing type of demeanor. And if you actually have a conjunction between Neptune and your ascendant at the same time, this will soften it. I was going to say dampen it or obscure it. You could say obscure because Neptune can be fog or something like that. Dampen might sound a tad negative, but I'm talking about, like, for instance, fire energy, which is just so sometimes over the top, like Leo, very dramatic, and it kind of obscures it a little bit, where the fire is a little bit muted. And that can actually be a good thing because sometimes people are very, they might be outgoing, but they might actually be overbearing if other factors support that. If somebody has fire as at the ascendant and they also have a fire sun sign or Mars in a fire sign, they may be a bit extra, and other people may feel that they are so extroverted that they suck the oxygen out of the room, or they're dominating the environment and seeking all the attention, especially, like I said, Leo. Not picking on Leo though, but Leo just has that natural dramatic flair. So, or even like a sign like Aries. Sag is a fire sign too, but I just think of Aries and Leo as being particularly overpowering, maybe I would say, in the sense of, how they present themselves sometimes. But yeah, so I want to give a shout out to advancedastrology.com because that is the site that I am deriving my information from. And one of the things that they mentioned that I have said before is that when you're looking at a planet like Neptune, which is a generational planet, meaning that it has, for instance, 15-year cycles, and I don't know if that's true of every transit that it has. If it's always 15 years, it might differ somewhat, but it's up there. That you don't really look so much at the sign itself because you're going to share that with people over a span of a decade and a half at least. So you want to look at a more personal impact, which would be what house is it in, and what aspects does it make to other planets or points, like in this case. So Neptune is this planet of illusion. It rules the sign of Pisces. So that Piscean influence, conjunction means that it's strengthening that bond to the ascendant, which has to do with the physical appearance, the mannerisms, how the person behaves when they are in the company of others, how others perceive them, especially like that first impression that they make. That's definitely not necessarily how the person really is, but it's going to be ethereal. It's going to be otherworldly. Physically speaking, the person may have a gaze that is a far off gaze. By the way, I'm basing some of my information from this website, but I'm also adding my own, and I'm interpreting in my own way. because I actually didn't see them say that, and I know that I've read that before somewhere else. And when we think of Neptune, uh, we think of the imaginative type of influence, the fantasy, mythology, and when it's connecting to the ascendant, this could be the way the person dresses. What I have noticed these days, and I don't know if this has anything to do with a particular generation, I'm talking about very young children, is that their parents are dressing them in costumes sometimes, and it's not Halloween. So I have seen little girls who are dressed as ballerinas. Now, of course, some girls are taking, ballet classes, so that would make sense. But I'm pretty sure, like kind of like fairy costumes and things like that, princess costumes, and boys like Spider-Man, Superman. I've seen them just like in a cafe bringing their kids in, and I know that they're just allowing them to dress like that. I don't know if they think it's cute to do it for them or if the children are asking for it. Maybe it was a leftover, Halloween costume. But this is kind of the thing that I'm referring to, where even the way that you dress can be very whimsical and express some sort of fantasy that you have. Yeah, those, like, what is that thing called? Cosplay. That would be in that category if you are a full blown adult and you're dressing like a character from Star Wars, although I don't know how many people do that on a daily basis. That usually that's going to a comic convention or something. Um, but there's that. Even if you wear regular clothing, something about you seems like you are not quite, on the earth plane. And sometimes I feel that it can really lead to a glamorous image. Neptune rules photography, and therefore there can be this. It might be that you're very photogenic. I didn't see it in the information that I read, but um, I feel that that's a possibility. I have read that people who become models is that they really have some kind of a magical connection with the camera, where it transforms their appearance. Like, they don't necessarily represent the image that is shown in the magazines or wherever, that they in real life, that they don't really look like that. Not anything to do with retouching or anything. I'm talking about the transformation that occurs, the magic that we could call it, because Neptune we could associate with magic. And yeah, it's very interesting because I'm going to also do the hard angles. I have an opposition from Neptune to the ascendant, and I found that I didn't necessarily take the best pictures. When I would take them, sometimes I felt like they didn't look like me, and I've actually had people say that doesn't even look like you. So it can work the other way as well. But the interesting thing is, what I'm saying with this aspect is that even if it doesn't look like you, it still is seen as something beautiful or magical. Even in person, if somebody else is viewing you, you may be kind of a shapeshifter of sorts, where one day you appear one way, another day you appear another. Because Neptune is associated with water, it is possible that you are capable of retaining water, and that can affect how you look weight wise. These are things that I just am saying on my own. I didn't see it on the site because I have read this about other placements, and I feel like this could definitely, anything that's a water sign or connected to water, the water element, I feel could have this potential. And this is very important because sometimes people, especially women, especially when they're younger, can be sensitive when they um, see themselves and think that they're overweight when they're just retaining water and that it's just temporary. It might be because they're on their period or they're, about to get it, or they've just had a lot of liquids. It can change very rapidly. So it's important to be able to see things without distortion. I think that's another thing that can happen here in a similar vein, is that the person may be distorted when it comes to how they view themselves. Like, do they see themselves as they really are? I feel that this will naturally lend an attractive quality to both male and females with this combination, because um, I feel like this, even if the person isn't like classically beautiful or handsome, they still will have this aura that is very magical and makes other people feel drawn to them and attracted. I mean, you think about the word attractive and you just automatically think of good looking, but you don't think of that magnetic quality that transcends physical appearance. In terms of your demeanor, there's a dreamy quality to you that, like I said, it can be um, expressed through eyes that are looking at some maybe invisible, faraway sight, but it's like it's not really tuned into anything specific because Neptune is very indistinct. Neptune rules fog and it's boundaryless. It's all about um, being at one. And so there's that sense of really kind of absorbing. And when you are absorbent, it means that you are very susceptible to what is around you. So it's very important with anyone who has this conjunction that they are very impeccable about the company they keep and in the environments that they inhabit, because you are likely one of those people who is not really well suited for a noisy environment, something that is very boisterous. It could be very upsetting to your nervous system or just your peace of mind, because Neptune rules the 12th house, which is the house of solitude and contemplation. So it's a very, contemplation is a silent activity. It's funny because um, I know I'm injecting my little stories here, but I was thinking about a time I went to a silent retreat that was supposed to be an all-day retreat. And I really like the idea of it because I feel like sometimes I feel awkward in social situations, like having to make conversation with people and things like that. So having a silent retreat was perfect. And then, like at lunchtime, people could go wherever they wanted, and I went down to the break room, or this was actually a spiritual center, but I went down to the where they eat, and there are like some other people in that room too, and they all started talking, and I was really pissed off because I wanted it to be very quiet. I didn't say anything, but I just I think I left at that point to be alone in the quiet. So this is something where you have that side to yourself for sure. Again, even if you're a masculine sign, an air sign or a fire sign, that tends to be more um, you know, extroverted. So, but also any kind of like a negative environment, you can soak it up like a sponge. And so you don't want to put yourself in that position when you have options in life. You're a very sensitive person, what we would call an empath. So you can absorb energies around you, feel the feelings of other people. But sometimes the problem with this, well, besides just that it can be very draining, is that you may not realize that it is actually other people. You might think it's your own um, emotions that are being activated when it isn't. So part of that are about energetic boundaries where you're able to um, move freely and still have that protection up. I'm not suggesting that anybody get paranoid about that because it's really, I think it's more like making a decision than anything else, than feeling like you have to do some kind of ritual or, spiritual practice to make sure that you are protected. I think it's really like making up your mind that you do have boundaries, that I think also it's that Piscean guilt where the person may feel like saying no is mean and it's selfish, and that you should sacrifice yourself for the well being of other people. There might be some of that. And sometimes that can attract people who are parasitic in nature. So that's one of the other things that can come about, I feel. These are things that it's funny. This is one of those readings where I'm talking mostly about things that I'm thinking about, but I do believe that that's true. And I also believe that because this is like having Pisces rising, that you might attract those types of narcissists. Because when I say attract, yes, it is energetic, but it's also the way a person carries themselves. And I feel like with this conjunction, like Pisces rising, that it could be a situation where you give off this vulnerable quality. And it is possible that when you were younger, that you were a victim, maybe like some kind of person, dominated you in some way, and you still have that lost quality to some degree. Not in a pathetic way. It could actually be very appealing to others. I feel that there can be a youthful quality. And that kind of, again, that might even be kind of energetic where the person, it's like the Peter Pan syndrome for the males, where they, have Pisces rising and they may, in some ways, have not grown up because, if they experience trauma, for instance, they may stay almost energetically frozen as a child, and they look at the part, but it can be that learned helplessness that other people, they rush in to help, but sometimes it can be a situation of dependency and thinking that this is that you need somebody to save you. I mean, this is something that I think can happen, even though I didn't read it here. I should stop saying that, shouldn't I? But I just don't, when I give a shout out to some website, I don't want to then say things that that I didn't see them mention. But I feel that for women, it can be the little girl lost, the lost little girl. Think about that song, if you know that song by the Doors, Your Lost Little Girl. Tell me, who are you? And that's another thing, too. You may not have a distinct personality. I don't know if I describe personality or image that other people can glom onto. So that's what, when I said about shape shifting, you may change and people like can't figure you out. It could be like multiple personalities or something. in a sense. Because of that ability to kind of take on your environment, you may um, change for that environment. Somebody meets you in one environment and then sees you in another, and they can't reconcile it. And this is interesting, when I talk about trauma, because if somebody grows up in a dysfunctional family, maybe there's chaos somehow in that family, being able to fit into environments can be a great coping skill that the person develops so that they are able to adapt. And that can actually be very helpful in certain situations. Now, you may appear as a blank canvas, therefore, to other people, and they may project things onto you. I was thinking about modeling and how the designer has their, pet models, or the models that they choose to work with almost exclusively, and they kind of like dress them up, and they can create all these different looks for that person, even if it's the same person. And I mean, that's one example. And of course, when somebody's looking at a model, they know that it's just for that to sell clothing. They're not going to assume that's really that person's personality. But you may appear like a blank slate for some reason, and other people can project onto you, but it can get tricky because it isn't necessarily who you are. And for instance, if you are someone, and I'll say a woman because typically this is how that works, who maybe even has a relationship with an older man, and he feels the reason I'm talking about age differences, it doesn't really matter if there's an age difference, but when there is, the older person can feel like they have the upper hand, and they're seeing that person in an unformed state, and they don't realize that that person is going to eventually grow up. Even if they meet them as an adult, they still have some growing up to do. And um, the more that you try to define yourself, it's really like creating a container. That's a word that's been floating around the New Age community, and it creates its own structure, and that gives it power. So you may enjoy kind of being a blank slate and being somebody's fantasy, but the thing is that it can lead to feeling yourself like you don't have a core, perhaps, if you, play it up too much. Problems can develop later on in a relationship when you show yourself to be different than what that person assumed you were. This is a great aspect for the artist. I would say, especially if you are a performer, like a dancer, or an actor, actress, a singer, because the appearance is playing into the performance. Like, of course, it could be any kind of artistic endeavor, but as to me, especially how you appear before others, like that magic that is created. We know that, if you ever watch a play and you see the actors go on stage, it creates its own reality. And there's something thrilling about that, how these people go into these characters and then they reemerge at the end when they're taking their bow, and it's like they come back out again. These are the kind of things that happen that enchant other people, and you can put a spell on other people with your movements or your aura itself. Because Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, it also goes without saying that you are probably highly intuitive with this conjunction. And, of course, other aspects of your chart, will see if that is enhanced or not. But even if you had, nothing else that would be specifically connected to spiritual gifts, this might be the one thing that would be an explanation of why you have them. All right, well, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a personal reading, the link is below. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.